All right, let's just jump right into it. Today, we're digging into a feeling that's been bouncing around all over Tamriel. From the battlegrounds to Cyrodiil, this widespread sense that the PvP meta in Elder Scrolls Online is, well, just fundamentally broken.
So what's behind this feeling of fighting against the game itself? We're going to unpack why so many players feel like the game's balance is just completely off, and we'll be pulling from some really sharp analysis from top creators in the community to get to the bottom of it.
And this quote from Skinny Cheeks, it just absolutely nails it. See, this isn't about players hating change. It's about this constant feeling that your power is getting chipped away, patch after patch, with no real plan in sight, leaving everyone kind of stuck in this cycle of frustration.
Okay, so first up, let's really define what we're talking about. What does it even mean for a meta to be broken? And why does it feel like almost everyone in the ESO community is on the same page about this right now?
It's this pattern that, man, if you've been playing for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A big update drops, maybe something like the subclassing system, and suddenly there's all this new power and excitement in the game. Players are loving it, they're making new builds, they feel strong, and then the next patch comes and just pulls the rug right out from under them.
And this is what happens. Just picture it. Your group is finally making headway in a tough trial, or you're climbing the ranks in Cyrodiil. You've figured out the new system, you feel good, only to have all that power just yanked away. And like Skinny Cheek says, nothing is given back to fill that new power gap. All that progress, that excitement, poof, it just evaporates.
Now, this feeling isn't just coming out of nowhere. It's driven by a very specific approach to balancing the game that a lot of folks in the community have started to call the predictable and, yeah, deeply frustrating cycle of nerfs. This timeline right here tells a story we've seen play out time and time again. You know, think about the Nightblade's Grim Focus. After subclassing, it became a must-have, so it got nerfed. But the real issue wasn't the nerf itself. It's that no other underperforming skills got a buff to compensate. So instead of opening up new build options, it just made the meta smaller. So the key takeaway here is that these changes feel reactive, not proactive. It's like the devs are just playing whack-a-mole, just cutting down whatever the tallest blade of grass is at the moment. Without a bigger plan to buff other things, it doesn't actually create better balance, it just leads to a weaker and, frankly, a more boring game.
And this question, which Skinny Cheeks asked after a particularly confusing change, just cuts right to the bone of the community's confusion. When there's no clear communication from the developers about why they're making these changes, players are just left scratching their heads. The nerfs feel random, and it's impossible to see what the long-term vision is, if there even is one.
And this lack of a clear vision gets even more complicated when you throw in another massive issue, something you see in pretty much every MMO, that constant tug-of-war between what PvP needs and what PvE needs. And a lot of the time, those two worlds want the exact opposite things.
This table perfectly illustrates the conflict. Arms of Reliquin. It was a legendary set for PvE trial runners, but it was also pretty good in PvP. Well, after a nerf, probably to tune its PvP performance, it was left, quote, dead than a doornail for the very PvE players it was made for in the first place.
And this gets to an even deeper problem with the whole design philosophy. When the devs seem to treat certain skill lines, like the Sorcerer's Dark Magic line, as PvP skills, it creates massive issues. It basically tells PvE players who love that class fantasy, sorry, this cool part of the game, yeah, not for you. It just limits player choice and creates this divide where one community's fun costs the other theirs.
I mean, it makes sense, right? The two modes are just completely different beasts. PvE is about perfecting your rotation against the boss that does the same thing every time. PvP is about messy, unpredictable fights against other people. When you try to balance both with one set of rules, you get these compromises that make nobody happy. And the result of trying to walk this balancing tightrope for so long is what a lot of players are now calling a crisis of class identity. Some classes, just because of how they were originally designed, feel totally left behind in the fast-paced, high-burst world of modern PvP.
Because let's be real, in high-end PvP today, one thing is king: mobility. If your class needs you to plant your feet to be effective, you are, for all intents and purposes, a sitting duck, just waiting to get blown up by someone who can move faster than you.
So let's look at a perfect case study from the Ratcast podcast, the Templar healer versus the Sorcerer healer. The Templar, which is supposed to be the classic healer class, is chained to the ground. You have to literally stand inside your extended ritual to get your main healing buff.
A sorcerer, on the other hand, they've got great passive stats. They're super fast with Hurricane, and they can streak across the battlefield to escape trouble, all while still healing their team. They never get pinned down.
And that's really the bottom line. As Icy Fire Gaming puts it, mobility is survival in PvP. A Templar's entire kit, with its need to stand still, is just fundamentally at odds with that, and that's why so many people at the high end consider it one of the absolute worst PvP healers, even though it has an entire skill line literally dedicated to healing.
So, we've looked at the cycle of nerfs, the PvP/PvE split, this whole crisis of class identity. Where does all this leave us? What's the endgame here for the game's balance and for the people who play it?
It all really boils down to these four things. Look, players aren't against change. What they're against are changes that feel disconnected, that shrink the meta instead of growing it, and that come with zero explanation of what the long-term goal is supposed to be.
And this is so important to remember. All of this criticism, all of this frustration, it is coming from a place of deep passion. People love ESO's combat. It's unique, it's skillful, it's reactive, with things like animation canceling that actually reward you for getting good. People aren't complaining because they hate the game, they're complaining because they love it and they want to see it be the best it can be.
So what do people actually want? It's not for a meta that never changes, it's for a healthier approach to balance, one that lifts up the struggling playstyles instead of just hammering down the popular ones, one that clearly communicates its goals, and one that continues to reward players for putting in the time and effort to master this incredibly complex game.
And ultimately, that might be the real question here, right? Maybe the path to a better, more balanced Tamriel isn't just about tweaking numbers in a spreadsheet. Maybe it's about fundamentally changing the conversation and building a more transparent, more collaborative relationship between the people who make the game and the passionate community that brings it to life every single day. Thanks for watching.